Good day, everyone. I am Harry, your moderator for this webinar on behalf of the organizer company called Conference Panel. I welcome everyone for today's webinar, which is called What Hospital Needs to Know About Non-Discrimination Interpreters Compliance with Section 1557 and CMS COPs. So now I would like to introduce our presenter for today. She is my favorite speaker, like awesome speaker. I have never seen a webinar like her. So her name is Laura Dixon. Laura Dixon served as the Director of Patient Safety and Management and Operations for COVID from 2014 to 2020. So now I would like to hand over the floor back to our speaker. Over to you, Mr.
Okay, thank you very much, Harry, and welcome everyone. As Harry mentioned, we're going to be covering a couple topics, and really these really focus on patient rights. It's the OCR, Office of Civil Rights. We're going to be talking Section 1557. That's a particular section that was weaved into and really impacts healthcare delivery, provision of healthcare, and all of the items that we're going to be providing to the patients, and of course the Affordable Care Act. The ACA, Affordable Care Act, and specifically Section 1557. There are penalties if they do violate them, and especially Title VI of the Civil Rights Act. Well, back in 2016, the rules started to come out, and there was an interpretation by Health and Human Services as a result, and actually it was an injunction. So in 2020, another rule came out, and of course there was another district court ruling this year of 2021. So as a summary, what did it boil down to? And so that's what they eliminated. That's the fact sheet that I had referenced. June of last year is when it came out. So let's go ahead and talk about Section 1557 of the Affordable Care Act. The program also covers healthcare providers, of course. Now, where a hospital or entity is primarily engaged in health services or health coverage, they also included in there that pregnancy was part of sex discrimination. And by the way, not just CMS, in other words, Centers for Medicare and Medicaid, but Joint Commission. There are many provisions in the ACA. Covered entity includes, as I mentioned, hospitals, clinics, the sex discrimination, and gender identity, because that has been such a hot button. They had to take out gender identity and termination of pregnancy. The transgender person, that's the person whose identity is different than what was assigned to them at birth. So here's an example of a transgender patient. Again, that was taken out along with stereotypes. Well, let's talk about race, color, age, national origin. Again, these are another ones that are prohibited. As far as citizenship and immigration, age discrimination is also prohibited. Let's move over to interpreters. Where else do you want to post it? Well, certain publications. Interpreters, this was really also another area that raised some questions and a debate. Now, there are certain certifications that you can require. It's up to you if you want to require this. CCHI certification, and this is the core entry. This is the entry level. There is the National Board on Certification, video monitoring. We touched on this briefly. Now, the interpreter, there's a difference between interpreter. There's the American Translator Association certification. This is the one free publication. Well, let's take a minute to step back and talk about what happened with translation during the pandemic. And there were a lot of waivers that came out, those 1135 waivers. Let's take a minute to talk about the notice requirements and that big phrase, auxiliary aids. The notice that you have to put up, electronic information, that has to also be in other languages. I mean, it doesn't help when you put the notice in English and that's it. Here's some examples of disability discrimination. Well, I mentioned we'd talk about grievance and complaints and compliance. The patient has to file the grievance within 60 days of the awareness of that action. Remedies, by the way, could include that, tell the CEO, I want the board of directors that we're going to notify them of 15 days. Well, let's do a few FAQs. And this is on, and also the OCR fact sheet that we talked about this. They issue frequently asked questions regarding language access on the top 15 languages. Now, there is a certain amount of training material that's available. So this is just how you can read some of the resolution agreements. You can go in there, find out what they did, how they handled it, that CMS put out a couple years, 2019 is when it came out. That is the IOM report. Here's some information from the Health Institute for Healthcare Improvement, IHI, talking about healthcare equity. There's other free resources available to you. That's a sample notice on non-discrimination and accessibility. And so I do want to say thank you for everyone for listening in. I have included in the appendix some of the resources that I did mention, a lot on Section 1557 of the Affordable Care Act, information on limited English proficiency, and other important documents that go along with those. And again, I want to thank everyone for participating today. OCR it's surprising how long it's been with us. And we're talking back in the 60s. And yet we continue to have these issues keep coming up here in 2021. It's going to take us, I have a feeling, a little more time. And I know with the pandemic, there has been some other concerns that have come up. Some of us are a little tired. We might be a little short-tempered and say things we never would intend to. But just so you're aware that these things still do unfortunately happen. So again, I want to thank everyone for attending. I want to thank Harry. Great job on moderating. And everybody stay well. Thank you very much.
Thank you, ma'am. Thank you, participants. So with this, we conclude this session for today. Thank you so much for joining today's webinar.